届东南亚事务咨询委员会的新南向文化交流系列座谈之一。那这一场是文化部跟当代馆一起合作。那首先我们请文化交流司副司长季东阳副司长来致辞。
Thank you everyone for coming. Today we have today's event organized by Ministry of Culture in Mocha, Taipei, and now we have the Deputy Directors of Cultural Exchange Departments for us.
大家好馆长好我们3位讲者以及我们东南亚咨询委员大家好首先要谢谢各位今天在平常日可以拨空来参加我们第5届的东南亚咨询委员的座谈。
Thank you everyone for coming to on this weekday afternoons for this event. This is actually our consultants for Southeast Asian Affairs in the 5th editions in Ministry of Culture.
文化部非常注重我们东南亚以及亚太地区的国际连结，我们希望能够借由人才的交流、资源的分享，能够加强跟东南亚地区跟亚太地区在文化艺术上面的这一个国际的合作。所以我们今年第5届的主题就是我们在一起 ，We Art Together。
So the theme for the 5th edition is called We Art Together because the Ministry of Culture has emphasized and paid a lot of attention on the engagement in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific regions. We hope that through art and culture we can enhance our understanding mutually through informations and collaboration.
在过去的这3年这个国际的疫情对我们的艺文界造成很大的困扰跟挑战。那我相信文化部跟我们东南亚咨询委员以及我们在亚太地区的一些合作伙伴经由线上跟线下仍然持续不断的进行国际合作。所以待会儿我们的3位讲者也会针对在这个疫情之后的这个时代我们如何在策展以及在艺术教育方面从他们各自的专业来提供一些独到的见解。
Of course, over the past 3 years, everyone is challenged by the pandemic. We are also seeing the impact in different parts of the world. So hopefully that in this talk today, the 3 of our speakers will talk about how after the pandemic they can enhance collaborations in the curatorial practices and education.
那今天我们会从3个主题方面，大家可以看到，我们会从策展、艺术还有教育这3方面来跟大家也听取大家在这个专业界的一些想法。那今天等一下我们的骆馆长会对我们3位讲者做他们详细的一个背景介绍。那我们也代表文化部再次谢谢Miss Gaweewong， 然后Mr. Kumjim， 还有Mr. Flores 做我们今天的 speakers。那我们先预祝今天的活动会圆满成功，也再一次谢谢 Mocha 台北这一次提供这么好的一个历史跟当代交融的一个这么好的一个场地，来作为我们今天的合作单位。谢谢大家，谢谢。
Once again, thank you everyone for coming today. Today we'll talk about curatorial practice, art, and education. And later on, our 3 speakers and participants will talk about their professional experiences. And later on, the director from Mocha Taipei, Luo Lichen, will briefly introduce our speakers. So once again, thank you everyone for coming here, and we hope we have a fruitful afternoon. Thank you.
再次谢谢大家今天的参与。
谢谢副司长。那我们现在请骆馆长来为我们引言。
Now let's welcome the director of Mocha Taipei.
那我也就跟着副司长站在这个位置，来为跟大家做一个介绍。今天非常开心是2023年新南向文化交流系列座谈，在台北当代艺术馆由台北当代艺术馆跟文化部的一个合作。
Thank you everyone for coming today. This is the sessions collaborated by Ministry of Culture and Mocha Taipei.
从昨天开始到今天甚至明天都有不同系列的演讲跟座谈。虽然我们今天下午这一场跟在正大另外一场是同时间发生，对。
And actually in this past few days and tomorrows as well, they will have different talking sessions. Actually, at the same time now in NCCU, there's another talk.
但是这一场在Mocha Taipei的这个座谈呢，它是以策展力、艺术力跟教育力来讨论当代艺术的现状。
As we mentioned before this session, we talked about curatorial practice, art and education, and how to apply it in contemporary art.
好，那我们这一次非常开心邀请到3位很重量级的，尤其是在策展还有艺术教育等等东南亚非常知名的3位策展人以及机构的这个负责人还有教育家。
So today we're very honored to have 3 of our well-renowned speakers, educators, and curators in Southeast Asia with us.
好，我想我先简短介绍3位，然后待会儿在逐一的这个顺序中再仔细介绍他们的背景以及他们即将为大家带来的这个讲题。
So I'll give you a very brief introduction of these 3 speakers.
好，我们第一位讲者，就像大家可以看到，第一位是 Gridthiya Gridthiya 是我们台湾其实非常重要伙伴，以及他对台湾也非常的熟悉。
Gridthiya, the first speaker, is actually quite familiar with Taiwan, and we have engaged quite frequently with her.
好 ，Gridthiya 他是泰国金汤城 Art Center 的一个艺术总监，同时也是这一届2023年本届新来举办的泰国双年展的艺术总监。
And Gridthiya is the art director for Jim Thompson Art Center and also the artistic director for the Thailand Biennials this year in
Chulalongkorn。OK， 然后他其实有非常多跟台湾这个联系交往合作的经验，包含去年在台北当代艺术馆我们的非邮寄展览，他也是共同策展人之一。
Actually, she has engaged with Taiwan, especially local Taipei, quite frequently. Last year in exhibitions, Nuns Travel Itinerary, I think that she's also a co-curator in the exhibition.
我们请 Gridthiya 先起来，我们大家就鼓掌欢迎她。那第2位是Flores， 他也是跟台湾非常熟悉，而且关系非常紧密的一位策展人及在学校教学的教学者。
And next we have Flores. Dr. Flores is also engaging with Taiwan frequently before and hopefully after the pandemic as well.
好，他除了是现任的新加坡国立美术馆的副馆长之外，他同时也是菲律宾大学艺术研究学系的教授。
He's a professor in the University of the Philippines. He's also now the Deputy Director of Curatorial Exhibition in National Gallery Singapore.
OK， 同时 Patrick 呢，他是2008年光州双年展的策展人，2015年威尼斯双年展菲律宾馆的策展人，以及2019年新加坡双年展艺术总监。
And he has been curators for different exhibitions, for example, 2008 in Guangzhou Biennials, 2015 for the Philippines Pavilions in Venice Biennial, and also 2019 for Singapore Biennial.
近期跟台湾的2个合作，第一个是2018年跟VT 非常妙吴达坤共同策展的登陆者这个台非交流大战。那其中有6位台湾艺术家，5位菲律宾的艺术家，共同在马尼拉的这个 Vargas 这个 museum 展出。
In 2018, that he worked with Taiwanese curators Uda was in the exhibitions with 6 local Taiwanese artists and also 5 Manila artists, and exhibited the works in Manila.
好，那2021年呢，他同时跟我们台湾艺术史研究学者蒋国兴共同策划了一个地域性的子午线，菲律宾跟台湾艺术史书写和当代文化策展的这个计划。
And in 2021, we also worked with our scholars Jiang in Taiwan to focus on curatorial and artistic projects between Taiwan and Philippines.
好，我们也先鼓掌欢迎 Patrick。那第3位讲者Prapon， 他是来自于朱拉隆功大学那他会为我们介绍有关这个教育力的部分。
So our third speaker, Prapon, is from Chulalongkorn University, who talks about art education.
他除了是朱拉隆功大学国际事务部的副院长，同时呢，他也是数位艺术中心的主任，以及在泰国很重要一个实验场域 Project 304的这个委员会成员。
He's now in the Chulalongkorn University for International Affairs and also works on FAAMAI and also works in the Project 304 in Thailand.
好，待会他会带给我们有关这个当代艺术在泰国，尤其朱拉隆功大学这个学程教育的一个经验。
Later on, we'll tell us about Chulalongkorn universities and their program in the universities on contemporary art education.
好，那我们接下来就要欢迎我 们的第一位讲者是 Gridthiya。在欢迎他之前呢，我先稍微介绍一下他今天会为现场的各位带来什么样的内容。
So our first speaker will be Gridthiya, and will be briefly introduced about what she's going to talk about.
好 ，Gridthiya 等一下会为大家从一开始，从后疫情时代的介绍，包含了后疫情时代，泰国面临了一个处境，不管是在这艺术的这个氛围上，以及国内政治的过渡时期，那他个人对于这个去中心化的兴趣，也会在今天的讲题里面。
So later on, Gridthiya will talk about the post-pandemic eras, what are the challenges and opportunities that faces the Thailand and also the contemporary art world as well, and also talk about her interest in decentralization.
那第二个大的部分是，他会为我们介绍泰国双年展这一届在清莱的这个经验，包含艺术家如何回归自我身份，以及塑造自我的身份认同。那这一届的主题叫做 The Open World。
So later on talks about the open world, the theme of the Thailand Biennial, upcoming Thailand Biennial this year, and also talking about what practice, find your self-identity in the process.
好，接下来就让我们欢迎 Gridthiya 带来精彩的内容。
Without further ado, let's welcome you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for inviting us to be here, and thanks to Ministry of Culture and MOCA. It's good to be back, and unfortunately when we curate the show last 2 years, it was because of COVID, so we can't really be here. And finally, it's good to share with you guys what we've been through, during COVID, and the plan of the future, for the next Thailand.
很高兴这次有机会受到文化部的邀请，跟当代的邀请之后，前来演讲。那过去2年的时候，虽然有很多策展合作经验，可是没有机会来到台湾。很高兴再次回到台湾。今天跟各位介绍的是我们即将在今年年底举办的泰国双年展。
So I think we've been through the same problem, when during the COVID happened, right? And what we are trying to do, and what we are facing in Thailand at the moment, it's kind of like similar to the global issues, which is, of course, digital disruption, the climate change, and for Thailand, we have a problem of PM 2.5 dust in the Thai borders area. So these are the major challenges that we are facing, and we all share. But it has not been addressed critically and widely in the Thai contemporary art discourse and practice, because we have been too busy dealing with our own internal affairs, especially the almost 20 years of unstable political situations. So people call this the lost decades, and it has given rise to the desperate and hopeless younger generation who are angry and anxious about their uncertain future.
过去几年当中，相信各国跟泰国一样都面临到疫情的影响跟冲击，当然泰国还要面临更多全世界共同面临的影响，包括了数位转型，包括气候变迁，当然还包括了泰国在边境地区有很多 PM 2.5这些微粒的这些影响，气候污染等等，都是他们面对的问题。那另外一个部分是，现在当代艺术还要去处理的另外一个问题，就是他们过去20年来当中，泰国的政治非常动荡、非常的不平静的情况之下，在过去很多时候大家都说这是失落的10年，那很多年轻人因此感到非常的愤怒跟焦虑。
So speaking about our internal politics, we are now in the midst of the political transition, and it may not be as smooth as silk as we expect. So even though Thailand has just been, and we just had election, and that should have been give us a very young PM from the Move Forward Party. So their proposals are focused on 3 main ideas. One is the demonopolization, and the other one is demilitarization. The last one is decentralization, a major problem in our country for more than centuries, after the internal colonization which started in the early 20th century. So personally, I'm interested in the decentralization of artistic activities, which mostly is focused. The activities mostly focus on Bangkok-centric to to decentralize to different major cities in the region. So as I told you, the centralization of administration in Thailand began in the early 20th century when the King Rama V started to annex the north, the Lana, where I come from, the northeast and the deep south, leading to the internal colonization or crypto-colonization, as Michael Herstel said. So I believe that art and exhibition making or curatorial process are powerful tools for helping this decentralization process. And simultaneously, it shall be able to revitalize the community's spirits as well as the well-being of people after the COVID period. So these are the main reasons why I take this job, as an artistic curator of the Thailand Biennale in Chiang Rai, which is my hometown, and it is the northernmost major city in Thailand, with a population of 500,000.
在现在这样的情况之下，泰国其实国内还有很多政治的动荡跟局势动荡还没有完全稳定下来。他们最近刚刚举行了大选之后呢，这样转型的过程，还有这个政权的转的过程，也许并不会让大家想这么样的平稳跟顺利。在大选之后呢，他们选出了非常年轻的前进党的党魁，那他们其实非常强调这些事，包括了去垄断化、去中心化，还有去军事化等等。那我自己特别的感兴趣是在于艺术活动的去中心化。各位可能也许对泰国的历史有所认知。其实泰国的历史在过去100年当中一直处于这个内部殖民的状况，以曼谷为中心的这个行政权的情况之下，很多当地其他地区都希望更多去中心化的发展跟出现。所以我也认为在疫情之后呢，透过文化跟艺术的这个活动之后，可以重新振兴当地的社区，还有重新去改善他们当地的幸福跟福祉等等。这也是为什么这次愿意接手即将在年底举办的泰国双年展的新来是泰国北部最大城市，也是我的家乡。目前的人口大约有50万人。
So this Thailand Biennale actually it started from 2018, and it's kind of surprisingly that it was initiated by the government, the Ministry of Culture, Office of Contemporary Art, and the whole ideas of decentralized process kind of started from within. And for me, I found it's quite interesting because the first time that they did was in Krabi, which is the south of Thailand. And the theme is called the Edge of the Wonderland. The curators are Chinese curator based in London.
各位刚刚看到是2018年他们在第1届的泰国双年展的情况。泰国双年展其实比较特别，他们是由政府所发起而推行的一项双年展。2018年就当时由中国籍目前现在居住在伦敦的策展人作为负责，他们当时是在Krabi这个南方的城市举办。
And the second edition was travel to the northeast of Thailand, and it was curated by Yuko Hasegawa and the Japanese curator and 2 Thai curators in the theme. And the theme is about ecological system. The title is The Butterflies Fluttering on the Mars.
各位刚刚看到第1届的双年展的主题叫做幻觉边际。那第2届双年展，各位刚刚看到的是日本籍的策展人长谷川裕子，还有搭配2位泰国的策展人之后，一起去策划的主题，主要专注在生态方面。他们当时主题叫做蝴蝶在泥上嬉戏。
So the 3rd edition was decided to be in the north of Thailand, which is in Chiang Rai, as I mentioned before. And it was the northernmost part of the country, and actually it has been a kind of an interesting area where it's kind of connect to Laos, Burma, and also China through the Mekong River. So the question that I asked when I got this position is, what do I know about this area? Even though I come from this area, it's very complex history.
各位刚才看到第1届的泰国双年展在南部举办，第2届在东北部，第3届的时候移到北部。那北部这个城市清莱这个地区呢，刚才各位提到是在泰国最北部的大城跟省份。这个地方呢，跟辽国、缅甸还有中国透过湄公河接壤。当时我在接下这个位置之后，在思考的是，到底我对这个地方有什么样的认识？虽然我来自这个地方，可是这个地方当地过去的历史非常复杂。
So we started from the city where I was born, which is called Shenzhen, and it was started. Actually, it has been built in like 6th century, and it was so a kind of like, many mythology, and many legends, kind of narrative about that area. And it started from like the king, from the Thai minority from Yunnan, and it's called Yonok, and then the city has been collapsed, because of the Naga was angry, so this is what we kind of know about our city. And then the city has been it's not the city, it's a kingdom, right? Because this area, Lana Kingdom, Lana means the million of the rice field. And then around 13th century, it started again by the Mangrai dynasty. So because of the Chiang San kingdom has been very small and it's almost like a buffer state. And the king Mangrai is kind of afraid of the Mongol, because the ancient geopolitics, started because of the Mongol was trying to invade Pagan, which is Burma, right? So that's why he decided to build a new city, which is Chiang Mai. So where is the old city? Chiang San was the old city, right? So this is the history that, when we were asked to do this project, like, what are we going to talk about? The whole area, which the history has been expanded from 6 to 13 up until 21st century.
各位看到这个地方是我出生所在地，叫做清盛。那清盛其实是清莱的旧城。那这个旧城区的地方，其实从西元6世纪就已经建成了。后来呢，他们当然依照他们的传说，他们当地的信仰的时候，后来这个城市因为天神或者是这个上苍的愤怒之后而崩坏跟崩毁，后来就把这个城镇，还有把这个所有的人民移到这个新城，新城就是清莱。那这个过程里面呢，其实这个地方整个地方叫做莱纳地区，莱纳地区有非常特殊的文化跟他们自己的习俗等等。这个地方到了13世纪之后。在这个Flores这个国王的过程当中，他们建立了一个小的王国。他们作为泰国，那过去这个还不是泰国的这个地区跟中国之间的一个缓冲区。他们当然过去的时候一直很担心，比如说来自中国的地缘冲突或者蒙古人的他们会入侵这个地方之后，所以他们后来建了新城。所以当时在这么复杂的历史背景之下，我最好奇的是，从6世纪建成的清盛到现在，我们在这个双年展里面要说什么样的故事？
So the position of this kingdom has been transformed, since the 13th century, and then we were colonized by the Burmese for 200 or 300 years, and then we were attacked by the Bangkok king, So that kind of history is very interesting. So it makes the kingdom was transferred into later a small district and province of Thailand, as the modern state. So these two monument is quite interesting because it kind of tell you the history of like 13th century to 20th century, and it's transformed. Oops. Oh my God, it's gone. Okay, and I lost very important slides. But anyway, this is like a chart to kind of inform you about how the city has been transformed into different period, from pre-history to modern states, to part of like a kind of under the internal colonization of Bangkok.
在这个地方，从13世纪到21世纪，现在这个过程当中，他们其实经过了很多次的变迁。他们曾经被缅甸人去殖民了200-300年，后来呢又被泰国就是曼谷这边的国王给王国入侵之后呢，在这个地方现在成为了泰国这个民族国家的一部分。所以刚刚主要强调是这个过程里面，他们其实经过了很多次的不同的殖民之后，现在成为了在泰国这个广大国家里面的其中一个相对比较小的省份。
And of course, because the nature of the city itself, it was the border city, right? So it served as an intersection of different cultures. So in the 50s, there was one very important book, written by the local politician. His name is Bunchue Sisawat, and he wrote a book called 30. Actually, in Thai, it's called 30 Nations in Chiang Rai. And actually, the word nations in our language, it can be ethnic group or race, So this is almost like 30 races in Chiang Rai. And I think it's very interesting because when the artists, from like the local artists who went to Bangkok and they kind of returned home, They were starting to think about their own identity. What is Chiang Rai identity? We are neither Lana, which Chiang Mai is the center, or we neither Thai, right? So neither nor Lana or Thai, but what is Chiang Rai? So they were looking at their own kind of city and also the cultural landscape. And then they kind of realized that and then it went back to the Wood Choices Awards book, right? The 30 ethnic groups of Chiang Rai. So this is how they represent themselves, as a very multicultural kind of city.
在这个地方呢，他们因为会在边界国家之间的边界，所以有不同的文化互相交融影响之下，所受到他们当地的文化。他们当地人一直在思考，比如刚才看到那个1953年的作品，1952年的作品里面，他们就讨论到，其实当地有很多不同的民族、种族或者是部族等等，有各种不同的文化交融在一起。很多的年轻艺术家从清莱或者清迈，他们到了曼谷去念书之后，毕业回到他们自己的家乡之后，就开始思考，他们到底是属于莱纳文化的一部分，还是泰国文化的一部分。那他们在这个地方也呈现出来了，他们其实有各种不同文化在这边共同并存。
So the other important part of the city was the artist community. They are very strong. They really kind of, they are Chiang Rai-based artists, but they are very strong on artisan and craftsmanship. Unlike Chiang Mai, because in the international community, we would see, there's so many contemporary artists live in Chiang Mai, but not all of them come from Chiang Mai. So they didn't really have that kind of sense of belonging, to the city as much as the Chiang Rai artists have, So the artists, they're trying to get together, and then they negotiate with the city that we need the museum. And of course, they never listen to artists, right? I mean, that was like in the 90s and early 2000s. So that's why a major artist, one built their own studio. It's called the Black House, or from Tawan Dachani. And the other one is younger generation. His name is Chalom. He built the temple. It's called the White Temple or Wat Rong Kun. And that was two major artists. And then they started to kind of get all the younger artists together, and they formed the association called the Art Bridge. And up until now, they have about 300 artists, as the members.
在金莱地区，他们其实艺术的社群组织非常的紧密，非常的强韧。然后他们其实跟清迈一样，都有很多当地的艺术家，他们也是非常的重视传统工艺跟传统的工艺师等等。很多人都会觉得说，很多的当代艺术家，泰国当代艺术家都住在清迈。他们虽然住在清迈，他们未必来自于清迈，所以相较于跟清莱这些艺术家比起来，在清迈这些艺术家，他们跟这个城市之间的归属感或者连结，也许没有这么紧密。相对而言，清莱的艺术家他们就非常的愿意的去组织起来之后，跟政府去谈判协商。他们当时希望能够去建立美术馆或者是博物馆，但是对方当然，在90年代2000年初的时候，艺术家要去跟政府要求什么，其实很难达成，政府常常并不会听从艺术家的想法。但是后来当地艺术家他们就自己建了这两个不同的白庙跟黑庙这两个作为艺术的空间之后，他们也成立了这个艺术协会，大概目前有300位艺术家作为会员。
And then they also built their own studio, as kind of against the ideas of they don't have an art space. So right now, if you guys are visiting the Biennale, we plan to open about 60 to 80 studios of artists for everyone to check it out. Okay, so this is part of the context of Chiang Rai that we're trying to kind of formulate the ideas of how can we approach and how can we create these frameworks or parameters for our Biennale. And then we did a lot of research trip, around the different districts, which we have about 18 districts, and then what we saw here, we went to Masalong, and of course, everyone in Taiwan will be very familiar with this part of history because it was the main station of the KMT, right? When they the lost army, after the civil war in China. So part of the army, they kind of stuck in the borders between the Burma and Thailand, and then instead of go to Taiwan, right? They just later they decide to stay there, and then the Thai government kind of used them, and they trade with them okay, if you fight the communists for us, we're gonna give you the citizenship, right? So that this is what happening from with this part of history in Masalong area, and then they kind of built this memorial, of the KMT in this area, the Masalong.
刚才提到那个协会，他们成立了很多不同的艺术家工作室。这次的双年展当中的时候，他们大概会开放在60到80间的艺术家工作室供大家参观。那当然在做研究的的过程当中的时候，当然有了解到在泰缅边境有很多过去的华人，还有这些我们过去的国民党的军队等等留在当地。那后来泰国政府也用了一些方式去跟他们交换条件，说如果你都帮我们去对抗共产主义者的话，我们最后就可以提供你公民权跟公民的身份。所以这也是他们在当地的另外一个非常具有特色的文化。他们这些人后来就选择没有到台湾来，而继续留在泰缅边境上。
And the left-hand side is Kurisa. He's very famous drug lord, who made our area, which is called the Golden Triangle area, but became very infamous, during the Cold War period.
那另外那位作像是昆萨拉的话，当时就是造成了我们对于这个地方有这种所谓金三角这个恶名昭彰的印象的原因。
So we went to the museum. There's two opium museums in the Golden Triangle. So we saw this, the Queen, the Queen Victoria, right? So was also very kind of influential during those, the Opium War. And then the right-hand side is another opium museum that is more or less like, told the story from the kind of small narrative, from local point of view. But it is always kind of represent what was happening, during the Cold War period, and how people saw Chiang Rai and Chiang Saen as very dangerous area. I remember when I was in the school in Chiang Mai, my friend's family would not let their children to visit me because they would think like, Chiang Saen is very, very dangerous.
那我们也是去探访了当地的2座英属博物馆，就是鸦片博物馆，他们当地有这些不同，比如说在象征冷战时期、鸦片战争时期的这些雕像跟塑像等等，或是在右边看他们用比较微观的方式去看待这一个关于金三角还有鸦片战争以及这个金三角这段历史。很多人他们对于清盛或者是刻板印象就是这个地方非常的危险。比如说我以前在清迈念书的时候，我们的同学他们的家长就不愿意让他们的孩子去清莱找我，因为他们觉得当地还有清盛实在太危险了，一般人最好不要过去。
Yes, and then we went to Chiang Khong, the other district, which is also very controversial because there was this Ajahn or Lao Sư Kuti, Niwat Roi Keo, who resigned from his school to fight with the Chinese government because they were going to bomb the stones, in the Mekong River. If you guys remember, like 10 or 20 years ago, the Chinese, they wanted to take the boat, from the Yunnan, to our region, and they want to have an access to the sea through the Mekong River, right? And because of these environmentalist activities, we won, they stopped that project, so that's why the Chinese government, they kind of detour, to build the high-speed train in Laos instead of focus on the Mekong River. Okay.
好，各位看到这边左边的这位的环境运动分子是也在当地非常知名。他当时的辞去了教职之后，去跟中国政府抗争。在10几20年前的时候，中国政府曾经一度想要去透过湄公河，让这个云南还有这些西南部的地区的这个货物的物流等等能够更畅通，所以就想要去试图去并吞，还有去侵占这个在泰国跟中国之间边界地区。那经过他们抗争之后，后来中国他们就是改变了想法，改变了路线之后，后来把高速铁路朝向辽国去发展。所以当这个人物也是在当地的历史当中非常重要的一员。
So we have this multicultural ideas, and then with this project, right, it's totally about the ecological system that we wanted to tackle on. So I think this kind of entangled history and what was happening in the past, it's really informed us, this is gonna be like, what are we gonna call this Biennale? So we went to this Wat Pasak temple, which is around 13th century, and we went to the museum and then also with this temple. And what we saw was like, the curators from Chiang Saen Museum, she pointed out for us, okay, look at this, this JD, it was a kind of manifestation of the influence from different cultures, including with Pagan, Tharawadi, Cambodian, Khmer, and also Chinese. What does it mean? It means that Chiang Saen has so many different cultures and people intersect that area. Right? So and then she told us like, and you know, if you know like this the Buddha's statues, you know, we have different around 66 gesture, and this gesture, you know, they call open world. And when I was listening to her, and I told everybody, okay guys, we got the themes, you know, of our biennales, let's call it open world, and everyone agree, you know, on that, because not because of this kind of, you know, concept, you know, but we just want to use the whole ideas of the open world as a departure point, you know, to connect with the other locality, you know, around the world.
可以看到，在当地的历史非常的错综复杂，这么多元的情况之下，我们当时在思考怎么样去呈现在泰国双年展里面去呈现这些不同的面向。所以当时我们去参访了这间庙，这间庙大概13世纪的时候建成。那这个庙里面呢，当时清莱博物馆的这个人员也告诉我们，其中很多不同的建筑的元素跟特质等等，其实都可以呈现出来。当地受到了各种不同文化影响，包括缅甸啊、缅甸、中国还有华人，还有各种不同的影响之后，在这上面都能够留下不同的痕迹。那当时我们就看到了其中一个佛教的塑像，那这个塑像呢，这个佛祖大概会他们塑像里面有66种姿势，这个姿势当时的博物馆人员说这叫做开放世界 （open world）。所以当时听到之后，我就把这个想法告诉我的策展团队说，我们希望用开放世界这样的想法作为这次策展的主题，希望去呈现的是这个地方跟在历史上如何用到开放世界的模式之后，跟世界各地产生不同的连接。
Okay, so this is the story of the open world. You know, when the Buddha image, when the Buddha got enlightened, you know, he was in the fourth kind of levels of heaven, and then he went down, you know, down from the heaven to teach his mother. So there was the time that, you know, the doors of the world, you know, from the underworld and the human world and the heaven kind of open. And everyone can see each other. So this is like, for us, you know, we interpret it as like, it's kind of the breakout of the hierarchical world, you know, which is very much kind of a core idea of the Thai society and Southeast Asia. And I think that is one thing. And the other thing is the open world, you know, we just wanted to kind of open people's perception on the art, right? And especially in Chiang Rai and also in Thailand. I don't know if you remember what Prapda talked about, the perception of people within the country. We always call ourselves like we are like a frog in the coconut shells, and our job is just we want to break that coconut shells, you know, to open up the world, you know, the perception, you know, to something else, you know, something beyond that kind of perception.
那各位刚刚看到的是佛祖的故事，在佛祖故事里面，他等到升天之后，重新下凡来，然后去打造出来了天上、地下跟人间3种不同的世界之后，在过去那段时间里面，这3个不同世界的人的这个存在的人是可以彼此互相看到对方的，所以我们希望去想象的是，在这个过程里面，他们打破了不同的阶层之后，那个时候阶层是流动，或者在不同地方可以互相的观望跟关照等等，这是我们当时所想象的一个概念。我觉得这也可以反映出来泰国或者东南亚地区。很多时候，社会都希望能够去打破不同的阶层。另外一个 open world 的概念是在现在这个世界里面，很多的线上的游戏能够强调是开放世界，里面并不是一个线性的逻辑去了解这个世界。所以我们希望让在不同的情况之下，让大家能够去打开新的视野跟新的空间。那在中文其实我们有讲过这种所谓井底之蛙的想法或者这个观念，我们希望能够打破这个井底之后，让大家能够看到井外还有什么样的事物。
And then in terms of the contemporary kind of cultures, open world is the name of the game, you know, for younger generation, you know, like, oh, open world games. And I think we also wanted to connect with this younger generation, you know, and in order to kind of bring them into this more like contemporary artwork.
当年轻世代是认知的开放世界是这样的游戏的大型的地图模式，所以我们也希望让更多年轻人有机会可以接触到泰国双年展。
And the other thing was about the response directly with the concept of the COVID, you know, because I remember we got this project done around like early 21, you know, so the COVID is still kind of, you know, a lot of countries still close the borders, and I think, you know, using the whole ideas of the open world is like we kind of reopen up the world again, you know, so people can reconnect physically.
那另外一方面，当然是在这几年的疫情当中，我们从2021年左右的时候开始进行策展的规划的时候，当时很多国家还是封闭边界，然后还是没有办法自由的往来。那我们希望在疫情之后，同样有开放世界的概念之后，让大家可以有更多互动跟往来的机会。
Yeah, so the whole idea is like, we want to ask a lot of questions because what you saw here is already like a grand narrative, of the area. And what we want to do, we want to offer this kind of small narrative, the alternate history. And we also want to play with our friends' previous Singapore Biennale editions of seeing that area as a Zomia, and many artists in the Asian Biennial last time, curated by Ho Zing-Yen and Jiawei, they already talk about Zomia. So, and I want to, in terms of curatorial practice, I want to play with that ideas, and a few curators and artists from that show, I invited them back to Chiang Rai because many work has been produced there, but it has never been shown in Chiang Rai. So I think it's going to be very interesting for local people and Thai people to see that in their context, that where they produce. So that was one. And the other one is we want to explore those kind of like a micro history, and we want to connect the local with locals. So our hashtag is featuring the artists from the Mekong to Amazon and beyond. It means that we want to connect more or less with the global south and also the edge of the world.
在这次的展览里面，我们希望能够去呈现我们刚才提到这个宏观的大角度跟历史当中的时候，有很多微观的观点跟微观个人的想法。其实不论是2019年新加坡双年展或者是亚洲双年展的时候，他们都提到过类似的想法。我们这次在这个双年展当中，也把部分来自于清莱这些艺术家带回到清莱，因为很多时候这些艺术品其实都是在清莱创作，也从来没有机会在清莱或者是清迈地区展出。我们希望让他们能够回到他们自己的脉络跟语境上面，然后去让大家能够去呈现他们这些创作由何而来，灵感来自何处。那另外一方面，也希望在这次的作品里面，能够从我们的那个主题涉及到，比如说从湄公河到亚马逊，我们希望能够去想到全球南方的概念，这些开发中国家或者是全球南方国家当中，他们有不同的脉络跟想法，在这个过程里面可以去呈现在泰国双年展当中。
Yeah, and we also reflect this complex and this entangled history. So what we try to do is to go back to the past, but also looking into the future. And then it's impossible to just use only one theme, ecology. It's impossible because we have two complex political, economical, culture entanglements as well as geopolitical. And then we are going to admit about the coexistence of time and art and craft. Especially in Chiang Rai context. So I hope to see everyone in Chiang Rai at the end of the year. Thank you so much.
我们在这次里面也希望能够去呈现，然后从包括回望历史，然后能够展望未来。我们当然知道这个地方的历史，我刚才提到的非常的复杂，不是政治、经济、文化等等都非常的复杂的情况之下，很难用单一主题来去呈现跟涵盖所有内容。但是我们希望这次的作为可以作为尝试之后，让大家看到在来自清莱的各种不同的历史面向。所以希望各位今年底的时候能够有机会到清莱参加泰国双年展。谢谢。
好，谢谢，我们再次谢谢 Gridthiya， 谢谢。好，接下来我们要欢迎我们的第二位讲者Patrick Flores。Patrick 会为我们带来这次为我们带来两个大的部分。第一个就是全球现代主义还是辽阔的地域，会介绍到他在新加坡国立美术馆担任副馆长以来的这些经验。
So next our speaker will be Patrick Flores. Dr. Patrick Flores will talk about his experiences in National Gallery Singapore.
当然里面就会包含策展以及这个策略的这个应用。
Of course, it will cover curatorial practices and also their strategy.
第二个部分，他会为我们介绍他过去在Flores Museum 的这个大学博物馆的这个工作的一个经验哈。那这个大学博物馆，这个Flores 这个博物馆，它是作为一个知识的共同体，以及呢如何培养在大学里面化学跟批判性的一个教学的一个经验。
They also talk about experiences in Flores museums, which is a college museum, and focus on how these influence their art education in the college.
好，那我们就要欢迎 Patrick 回答这个英文的分享。
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you Lee Chen for the gracious introduction, and thank you to Mocha Taiping for the invitation and the hospitality.
非常感谢这次文化部还有台北当代馆这次的邀请之后，能够在这边跟各位演讲。
From what I understand, this panel would like to think about the power of artistic and curatorial work in relation to its educational potential, or the ability of art and curatorship to communicate information and create conditions of learning and deliberation.
我们希望这次透过我们这个主题要讨论策展艺术跟教育的话，我们相信透过艺术的呈现之后，透过艺术的沟通之后，能够去把各种不同的资讯还有概念传达给不同的人。
So I view artistic and curatorial talent in terms of how it is able, on the one hand, to provide context and the basis of distinction, or in other words, the origin of any kind of material or where it comes from.
在过程里面，我们认为在艺术家或策展人他们应该要去能够呈现的方式是能够透过他们的创作跟去说明其中的脉络，还有去讨论各种不同素材的来源何在。
On the other hand, the artistic and curatorial imagination also has the ability to provide the possibility for the material to be somewhere else, to move and migrate. In other words, where the material can lead to or end up in, how it can travel and transform.
另外一方面呢，艺术家跟策展人的另外一个角度跟能力呢，是在于他们要强调他们能够把这样的原来的素材跟原件带到不同的地方，或者是迁徙、转移或转型之后，让他们呈现在不同的环境当中。
So in this presentation, I will introduce two ways of how artistic and curatorial work can provide knowledge around both the origin and migration of the material, coming from my two sites of work, which is the National Gallery Singapore and the Vargas Museum, which is the National Gallery Singapore.
但另外一方面的话，我们今天要跟各位介绍的是，我们如何去呈现出来，在这样的过程里面，艺术家一方面去述说这些素材的来源，另外一方面述说这些艺术家能够把素材带往何处跟何方。那当然，过程里面会应用到我在新加坡国立美术馆，还有在菲律宾这个美术馆的经验。
So the first is the concept of global modernism from the National Gallery Singapore, in which a local artistic material is curated as part of a conversation on the global and the modern, meaning it makes the assumption at the outset that the local can be inserted or translated into the global and the modern.
在新加坡国立美术馆，他们非常强调的是一个所谓全球现代主义的概念。他们的意思是强调说，这些在地这些内容，他们可以成为全球还有现代的一部分。所以他们一直从这个美术馆成立以来，他们就一直秉持这样的信念跟逻辑，认为全球在地的内容跟文化可以作为全球还有现代的一部分。
So the second concept is from the Vargas Museum, in which the local is imagined as inherently or intrinsically extensive, meaning it makes the assumption that the legibility and significance and circulation of the material does not have to be framed within the global and the modern. Instead, it can begin with the local that reaches out from within and initiates interlocal affinities, and activates interlocal affinities, just like what I think Gridthiya was talking about, in which the idea of Chiang Rai becomes an extensive locality.
另外一个Vargas美术馆，他们的观点是另外一个观点，他们认为这些一切内容都是从在地延伸出去的。换言之，在地不一定要成为全球或者是现代的一部分。他们从在地之间的互动之后，可以去延伸出不同的内容。就像Gridthiya刚才提出的，从新来这些艺术家出发之后，去延伸出他们所谓的互相之间的在地性。
So this is basically the premise of National Gallery Singapore, as I interpret it. So it is invested in the National Collection of Art, which is, of course, which translates to National Art History. And this is of course, the art history of Singapore. It is also invested in the Regional Collection of Art, and therefore, Regional Art History, and this region is Southeast Asia. And then it is interested in the global and the modern. Modern art within a global context, in which the modern art of Singapore and Southeast Asia becomes part of global modernism.
这也是我刚才所诠释出来，新加坡国立美术馆他们当时在收藏还有去呈现作品的时候的观点。一方面，他们当然有国内自己的收藏，去呈现出新加坡自己本地艺术史；另外一方面也有这个区域的收藏，去强调的是东南亚方面的艺术史。那另外一方面，他们也强调的是这些现代跟全球的内容。换言之，他们有这些的内容之后，他们可以认为把它置放在全球跟现代的脉络当中。
So this is institutional propaganda. But anyway, this is the new curatorial vision of Singapore. I'm new in the job, so I have to move the institution. So the new curatorial vision from last year, from 2 years ago to 2025 is to build the most globally significant collection of Singapore and Southeast Asian modern and contemporary art, reflecting the full diversity of practices and perspectives, position the histories of art in Singapore and Southeast Asia as integral to global art histories, and promote the understanding of Singapore and Southeast Asian art internationally. And this is my focus here in this talk. The second vision, which is global modernism. The third is to reflexively rewrite the art histories of Singapore and Southeast Asia and foster a deeper understanding of the significance of art and its histories for our societies today. And finally, to play a role in supporting and developing the art sector in Singapore.
这个是他们的新加坡国立美术馆的工商服务时间，然后因为他刚刚到这个工作之后，还跟各位说明一下，新加坡国立美术馆在2021年、25年之间的这个策展的视野，他们希望能够去呈现在这个在全球化的这个概念当中的时候，去呈现到底在东南亚还有新加坡有什么样的当代艺术的这个实践还有观点。那另外一方面，他们来强调是把新加坡跟东南亚放置在全球的艺术史当中，去了解到底当地跟到底有哪些不同的国际上的艺术。另外一方面，他们也需要强调，他们要在去回望这些新加坡的艺术史的历史之后，去书写他们。最后一点，当然是希望能够支持新加坡当地的艺术社群。
Well, anyway, this is the blueprint as we have discussed within the museum, and ultimately it leads to the deconstruction of the canon and the decolonization of art history. So I won't elaborate, but ultimately it leads to the deconstruction of the canon and the decolonization of art history.
所以这个是他们在经过内部的讨论，跟这不同的观点，刚才提到这些全球现代主义观点之后，最后总结出他们的重要的观点，就是这句话：解构大师巨作跟艺术史去殖民化。
Okay, so the focus here is to position the histories of art in Singapore and Southeast Asia as integral to global art histories and promote the understanding of Singapore and Southeast Asian art. I think that has been translated. No? And as an example, I'd like to draw your attention to the forthcoming exhibition of Fernando Sobel, an artist of Filipino and Spanish heritage who recently had an exhibition at the Prado in Madrid.
那当然提到今天要强调的重点，就是要把新加坡跟东南亚的艺术史置入在全球艺术史当中，进而去了解新加坡跟东南亚的艺术史。那这位是我们即将要举办的展览的艺术家周报，他是1924年在菲律宾出生，他近期的时候也在他的作品近期也在西班牙的马德里有展出。
So Fernando Sobel, the show of Fernando Sobel will travel to Manila next year and to Singapore in 2025.
所以他的展览呢，之后2024年会在菲律宾展出，2025年会在新加坡展出。
And I think Fernando Sobel is a good example of how the National Gallery Singapore can concretize the vision of global modernism through a Filipino and Spanish artist who work in 3 continents: North America, Asia, and Europe.
那透过这个艺术家的作品呢，新加坡国立美术馆去呈现他们这个所谓全球现代主义的观点。因为毕竟这位艺术家有菲律宾跟西班牙的血统跟背景，同时他的作品还有他的实践的历程呢，涵盖了北美、欧洲跟亚洲3大洲。
So through Fernando Sobel, we see different modernisms intersecting. So the first modernism, of course, is Philippine modernism, in which Sobel was very active.
在他的作品当中可以看到不同的现代主义彼此交错影响而成。那当然第一部分是来自于菲律宾的现代主义，会看到他的作品里面，菲律宾当时现代主义的影响跟力量非常强大。
But he was also interested in Asian modernism in modern Japanese calligraphy. So this is another entry point into the global modern through Asian modernism.
他自己对于亚洲的现代主义非常感兴趣，比如说包括了亚洲还有日本现代的书法的这元素，所以这个观点跟切入角度也可以去强调所谓的全球现代主义的另外一个面向。
So he was in conversation with modern Japanese artists like Shirio Morita and Munakata Shiko.
比如说，他就跟这两位当代的现代日本书法家有很多对话。
But he was also interested in American modernism. So this is another entry point to the global modern through the conversation of Sobel with, for instance, someone like Franz Klein.
他自己对于美国的现代主义也非常的感兴趣，所以再次强调这个全球现代的概念。比如他跟美国的现代主义的艺术家Franz Klein 也有很多对话。
And he was, of course, part of Spanish modernism. So part of this global modern framework, we would like to situate Sobel in relation to his peers in Spain at the time, like Manuel Millares, Antonio Saura, and Antoni Tapies.
当然，他也是西班牙现代主义的一部分，所以可以看到跟他同辈同时期的这些西班牙的现代主义的艺术家跟创作者，跟他之间也有很多交互的影响跟互动的经验。
And he was interested in photography. This is late style of Sobel, and this is quite, for us art historians in the Philippines, this is quite new to see Sobel dealing with photography and translating photography into painting.
可以看到，他后来也对于摄影非常感兴趣。其实对于菲律宾的观众而言，这其实是比较新或者比较不熟悉的面向，就是 Sobel 他其实后来也把摄影转化成像是在做绘画跟艺术创作的一部分。
And finally, Sobel established the Museum of Spanish Abstract Art in Cuenca in 1966.
另外一方面，Sobel 这位艺术家也在1966年的时候成立了西班牙抽象艺术美术馆。
So this is the Museum of Spanish Abstract Art in Cuenca, like maybe I think an hour away from Madrid.
所以大概知道那个Cuenca大概离马德里距离车程1个小时左右，在这边成立了抽象艺术馆。
So this is the interior of the Cuenca Museum with works of Spanish modern artists.
这是美术馆内部西班牙抽象艺术现代艺术绘画创作者的作品。
Yeah. So Alfred Barr visited Cuenca and said that the museum is the most beautiful small museum in the world.
我们的朋友也曾经去过这个Cuenca美术馆之后，他们认为这是世界上最美丽的小美术馆。
Yeah. So the second model is a model from my previous work site, which is the Vargas Museum in the Philippines.
那接下来要介绍的是我自己也在菲律宾 Vargas 美术馆里面的工作经验。
Which is a university situated in the campus of the University of the Philippines, and the University of the Philippines was established with Americans in 1908, but became part of the militant activist history of the country, especially in the 70s.
这个美术馆是坐落在菲律宾大学当中，菲律宾大学是美军在1908年的时候在菲律宾成立的，当然后来也跟他们的无论是军事主义、军国主义，还有很多的历史有很深刻的影响跟交错。
So the concept is the university museum. So the museum within an intellectual community, it's a producer of knowledge and also a medium of representation. But I'm inspired by the concept of Clementine Delis about the museum university, in flipping the phrase university museum so that the museum becomes an intellectual community. And the university thinking and acting like a museum, it is interdisciplinary, it is critical, and it is also collective.
所以当然这是一个大学美术馆，大学美术馆当然强调是这个大学美术馆周遭有很多知识的社群，他们会产生各种不同的知识，也会做各种在线的媒介。那另外一个方面 Clementine Delis 他也提到过这个美术馆大学的概念，他希望呈现的是美术馆本身就是个知识社群，那大学的思考就像美术馆一样的思考，出更多跨领域，而且更多批判性的、集体性的这些思维。
So as you can tell, the framework of the University Museum is different from the framework of the a modern art museum like the one in Singapore.
所以大家就会看到这个大学美术馆他们的思维模式跟运作的模式，就跟刚才提到这个新加坡国立美术馆有很大的不同。
Anyway, I try to negotiate the two schools of thought in curating. As I worked before in Vargas and as I work today in Singapore.
所以不论是在菲律宾或者现在在新加坡，都在试图在两种不同的思维模式里面去找到自己的折中的方案。
So as a university museum, the Vargas has always been sensitive to the institutionality and governance of the university museum, gallery and art center, the curatorial method of the institution, the engagement of the institution with discourse, archive and contemporary culture, and for the relationship of the institution with the public.
当然，在大学美术馆当中，他们不免的势必是这个大学里面的一部分。那在大学一部分的时候，表现出他们自己有什么样的策展的方法，以及他们如何去建构不同的论述，还有档案库资料，以及他们自己的当代文化。最后是这个大学美术馆要怎么样跟大众之间互动。
Yeah. So the donor of the collection was Jorge Vargas, who was a political figure in two colonial governments in the Philippines, the American government, and then the Japanese government from roughly the 1930s to 1945.
那这个美术馆的捐献者 Vargas 就是当时的冠名的 Vargas， 他其实是在过去两个不同的殖民时期都担任过官员，包括在美国殖民时期还有日本殖民时期。日本殖民时期大概是1930年代到1945年左右。
So in the main exhibition, the permanent collection of Vargas, I curated 3 layers. The first layer, of course, is the collection. The second layer is contemporary art in conversation with the collection, and then finally the archive.
那在这个美术馆里面，我们呈现的这个常特展当中有3个不同的层面。第一，当然是这些藏品里面所呈现出来的展品；另外一个层面是当代艺术家跟这些藏品之间的对话；第3个部分则是档案资料。
And Jorge Vargas was the social biography of Vargas is very rich and interesting. So I make it part of the context of the collection. So Vargas was, as I mentioned, a political figure in the American and Japanese colonial governments, but he was also involved in international sports, like as you see here in the Asian Games in the 50s, and also in the scouting movement. So this idea of sports, politics, and scouting intersected with his endeavors as a collector of art.
那这位Prapon Kumjim 他的本身这个个人就非常的有意思，他有很多不同的背景。他除了是刚才提到这个殖民政府时期的政治人物之外，他自己也非常热衷于参与运动，所以可以看到1950年代的亚运的时候就有他的身影。在右手边的话，其实他自己对于童子军的运动也非常有兴趣，所以我觉得他自己的个人背景之后，也可以把它释放在这样的一个整个藏品的脉络当中，作为对照跟这个互相的映照。所以这个地方就可以去看到还有不同的身份，包括了政治人物，还有参与运动者，还有童子军以及个人作为藏家的身份。
I'm now showing you some examples of exhibitions of the Vargas in the temporary space and the space dedicated to temporary exhibitions of the Vargas. So I'm showing you some examples of how we would like to reach out from within. So the Vargas of Manila becomes some kind of example of this extensive locality in which, let us say, the international world or the global world is mediated through the locality of the University Museum.
透过这些不同的展品的这些陈设跟安排跟策划之后呢，我希望能够让这些从内而外的金融去触及到当地的民众跟当地这些大众互动。那另外一方面，同时把它释放在我刚才提到的这些延伸出去之后，在全球跟现代的脉络。所以这是我强调的，这个是从当代跟在地从在地开始往外延伸之后所产生的作品跟特质。
So in 2017, we had an exhibition of Romanian art in transition in the 90s.
那各位看到，这是我们在2017年的时候，在提到1990年代的时候，在中东欧地区，他们有些不同的转型过程的记录跟展览。
Yes, so this is something from the archive in which we see the former President Ferdinand Marcos and his wife Imelda Marcos hosted the infamous Ceausescu couple in Manila, and in fact the university gave Ceausescu an honorary degree.
那各位看到，这是当时在菲律宾总统马可仕跟他的夫人伊美在当时接待了来自于东欧的这位非常知名的恶名昭彰的独裁者，他的到了菲律宾做博士访会，当时菲律宾大学还因此颁发了荣誉学位给他。
So this is also another exhibition that Vargas organized together with the Asia Center of Japan Foundation. I co-curated with Kyungfa of Tokyo to produce Almost There, an exhibition that explores the relationship between the museum as an institution and the public around it.
那当时我们也是做了另外一个跟日本基金会的亚洲中心合作的展览，跟日本的策展人一起合作之后，去讨论到了大学美术馆跟大众之间的关系。
So I cannot go. I mean, I have very limited time that I just show you some slides of examples of works that were featured in the exhibition. This is one from Musako Fuminori, who did an architectural form in between the building of the museum and the street of the university. So for me, it is some kind of metaphor or allegory of this gap between the institution and the public, and the gap has to be filled with something. So one way to do it is to produce some kind of parastructure, like this one by Fuminori, which could serve different purposes.
各位看到这张是我们因为时间有限的关系，就给各位看当时展览其中几件作品。那这个作品呢是来自于 Fuminori， 它当时是设计的是这个建筑的架构是架构在美术馆跟外面的树之间，那呈现的是美术馆跟大众之间还有很多的缺口或者是鸿沟，需要透过不同的东西来填补。那他所做的东西，也许透过这样的一个权力结构之后，试图去填补美术馆跟大众之间的这个断层。
So we also invited Carolina Caicedo, who produced an altar of as a homage or as a tribute to the fallen or ecological activists in the Philippines and all over the world, who died in their as they pursued their activism.
那这位艺术家在呈现的是，他们透过这些不同的献祭、不同的祭品之后，要去纪念跟悼念这些在世界各地还有菲律宾，他们为了要去争取环境权、生态的之后，而因此牺牲的烈士们。
So we also held this vigil for those victims in the university.
所以同样也是有这样的守夜活动。
And the structure of Fuminori Musako was also hosted this Brechtian play, this play by Bertolt Brecht, The Caucasian Chalk Circle, which was translated into Filipino.
那各位看到这个在那个建筑的架构跟结构呢，后来也是因为去举办了各种不同的演出跟行动，同时这个演出经过翻译之后，把它翻译成当地的语言。
And then the work of there's this work. Oh, yes. And then ties of history, art in Southeast Asia. This will be very quick because I have no more time. Just to show you how we also organized an exhibition of art from Southeast Asia during the 50th year of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. My concept here is to do art history within contemporary art exhibitions. So this is an intergenerational exhibition of artists from Southeast Asia who were active from the 70s to the present.
那各位看到，这是另外一个展览，他们去强调的是在东南亚之间很多历史上的连结，通过艺术的方式去呈现。当时是为了要纪念东协他们的这个成立的这个周年纪念，所以他们涵盖的是在这些不同的国家当中，他们从70年代到现在各个不同世代的艺术家之间，他们一起去建构出来的东南亚的艺术，还有彼此之间历史的连接。
So Ties of History involved 3 museums in the city: the Vargas Museum, the Yuchenko Museum, and the Metropolitan Museum of Manila. So one was a university museum, the other a corporate museum, and then the other one a modern art museum. So as the viewers walked around the city, as the viewers visited the exhibitions, they were also able to walk around, not really walk, move around the sprawling city of Manila.
各位看到，这是在当时他们展览的地方的现场。那刚刚那个 Flores 是大学博物馆，下面这个呢是企业博物馆。那就左边还有左边那个是官方的现代艺术美，就是现代美术馆。在这种情况之下，那一般的观众在穿梭在这3个美术馆之间的时候，也能够看到马尼拉这个城市不断扩张的现况。
So we have the Gridthiya Museum, just an example. We no need to translate. The Vargas Museum hosted the video works, and then the Metropolitan Museum of Manila hosted the larger installations.
所以刚刚看到这是不同的美术馆所在地的产生作品。
Also an interesting project. Vargas collaborated with Gridthiya Gaweewong and Thomas Wu, who had this project of protest. The idea of protest all over the world. Wherever it went, it involved local artists to represent protest in their locality.
那各位看到这个作品跟这个区块的强调的是跟抗争有关的历史，在世界各地，无论是在什么地方发生抗争的时候，很多的艺术家都会把抗争转化成他们的作品的一部分。那各位看到这是其中的展品。
So in this exhibition, I asked Filipino artists to choose representations of protest and draw them on the wall.
所以我当时邀请了菲律宾艺术家去再现不同时期的抗争，然后把它画在墙壁上。
So this one is about the phase out of the public transport in the Philippines.
所以这是当时在抗争，或者是去对抗这些当时政府打算要封建大众跟运输工具的这个抗争。
This one is on the discrimination of domestic workers in Hong Kong, Filipino domestic workers in Hong Kong.
那这是当时为了要去抗议，比如说在香港这些来自菲律宾的家庭雇佣，他们会受到歧视的情况。
And then a trans woman who was killed by an American serviceman in Manila.
或者是在马尼拉曾经发生过有美国人，他们曾经杀害了跨性别女性的经验。
So these drawings were in progress as the exhibition proceeded during its run. We also initiated the timeline of Philippine protest that involved the participation of the public, and also we organized talks around the political situation in Manila with the drawings as some kind of the scene of the event.
所以展览期间的时候，其实不同的作品陆续的出现，那也邀请了很多大众一起去参与，去编写了在菲律宾当地的抗争的历史，或者也举办各种不同的活动，而这些抗争的画面跟记录就呈现在背景当中。
The last example is a recent one. Before I left Vargas for Singapore, I collaborated with a Romanian curator to produce this exhibition on a Croatian prison, in which the prisoners were women, all women, who were subjected to also all forms of torture. So and trauma. So the artist was Andrea Koloncic, and the curator was Anka Mihulet. So it first was shown at the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Rijeka, and then moved to the Vargas.
那这也是我在离开菲律宾到前往新加坡任职之前的最后一件策展的经验跟作品。那各位看到，当时是跟罗马尼亚的这个策展人合作，他们当时这个展览关注主题是在当地有一座女子监狱，过去在这个独裁政权期间的时候，有很多的女性囚犯都面临到很多虐待，还有很多创伤等等。那这些艺术家就试图去反思跟去呈现这些作品。那当然，这个作品之前在罗马尼亚展出过，后来到了菲律宾来展出。
Yeah, so just images of the exhibition, and also the workshop of the artists with the students at the university.
那这些就是当时展览的内容、过程，还有跟学生之间的工作坊经验。
I think that's it. So I hope I was able to demonstrate the difference between global modernism from National Gallery Singapore and extensive locality from Vargas Museum. They are not meant to be binary oppositions, but it's just that the institutions, the platforms allow for certain types of curation to be produced. And this is how a university museum does it and how a modern art museum does it.
所以各位看到，今天是我透过我的简短的时间，希望跟各位说明，在这两个不同的机构，新加坡国立美术馆的全球现代主义，还有 Flores 美术馆，他们所强调的延伸在地主义这样的概念之后，去呈现出来的作品跟范例。那并不是要做二元对立，只是告诉各位，在不同的机构当中的时候，势必会有一些不同的策展策略跟可能性。
So thank you very much.
谢谢大家。
精彩的演说哈，他等一下演说完应该是很快就要去赶飞机。那我们也来到我们最后一位讲者Prapon Kumjim， 他为我们介绍在泰国朱拉隆功大学的这个教学经验。那他今天可以先。
So thank you, Patrick, for your talk before catching the flights. And our last speakers will be from Chulalongkorn University.
OK， 我相信他今天会介绍这个学程里面非常精彩，就是有关这个批判性的探索的一个教学。然后他们其实在这个泰国在曼谷这个地区有很好的连结，包含他们这个区域这个学程会跟泰国的这个会跟清迈的当代艺术博物馆、曼谷的 DC 收藏以及曼谷的这个 BACC Jim Thompson Art Center， 还有泰国双年展等等。
So this program has a lot of connections, not just with the Chulalongkorn University, but also with the contemporary arts centers in Bangkok.
好，那这个学程呢，在加深对于策展实践以及对于整个这个艺术产业，不管是在地、区域或是国际上的贡献。那它其实是一个全英语的一个学程，然后呢，也培养非常多在这个艺术专业领域的人才。那我们就欢迎Prapon 为我们介绍今天精彩的内容。
So today we'll talk about this program. This program is an English program and it contributes to the art, contemporary and modern and contemporary art practices in Thailand and around the world. So today we're very happy to have Prapon to talk to us about this program.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank our host, MOCA Taipei, and the Ministry of Culture. I'm trying to be respectful to Patrick's deadline as well, because I understand that he has to leave at exactly 5 o'clock. And I guess the highlight of this event would be the panel discussion. So I try and keep this as concise as possible.
5点Patrick 5点多就要去赶飞机，所以我们会尽快的把今天的课程今天的各课程讲完之后呢，我觉得今天重点应该是点他的座谈。
Okay. So, 2 parts of my talk will be about Chulalongkorn University's FAAMAI, which is FAAMAI.
那今天就要跟各位主要介绍2个重点，一方面是朱拉隆功这个 FAAMAI 的课程。
FAAMAI is actually it stands for Faculty of Fine and Applied Arts Multidisciplinary Art Innovation.
所以这个的 FAAMAI 的缩写呢，全名翻成中文叫做艺术与实用艺术学院的跨领域艺术创新课程。
In short, Digital Arts Hub.
对，基本上呢，简短而言就是数位艺术中心了。
So this is a very typical Thai government initiative in the sense of we have to adhere by the keywords of each budgeting kind of strategy.
所以这个课程之所以名字这么长，是因为他们在泰国政府的这个预算的规划之下，要把每一个涵盖内容都要写进去。
So at that time, about 5 years ago, the word innovation became the underlining kind of budget allowance.
所以5年前的时候，他们去争取预算的时候，就非常强调那个创新这个字眼放进去。
So it sounds fake, but this is the reality of civil service in Thailand.
这也是在泰国公务体系的现实。
So back to the artistic part. Basically, we were hit severely by COVID. So at the time that we were supposed to be launching this program, we came to Taipei in December 2019. And shortly after we flew back, I think within a matter of 10 days or something, the lockdown happened.
所以其实我们在这个课纲其实受到疫情影响非常严重。我们之前曾经为了宣传的时候，2019年12月来过台湾，那到之后大概回去之后大概不到10天吧，各地就开始封城，然后封锁国境。
So the activities that we had planned, it just all became, we had to adjust heavily because we could not shift the timing of the budget. Everything had to go ahead according to plan. So we basically had to change a lot of our traveling plans, etc.
那当时的话，因为预算已经写下去了，但是预算一定要在时限之内把它用掉，所以当时的话，我们必须要在这些不同的情境之下，还有种种限制之下，开始调整很多内容。
So we, along the way of the FAAMAI program, we came across industry partners.
在这个课程当中的时候，他们有很多的产业界的伙伴。
Which was a Singaporean events company called Pico.
它这个主要是做新加坡的一家叫做 Pico 的公司，主要是做会议的筹办。
So they invested in a geocitic. It's like a planetarium dome, which was 35 meters tall, and it's basically the largest of its kind in Asia.
当时他们这家公司呢，就去打造了一个高35公尺的一个巨型的穹顶，大概当时是亚洲最大的穹顶。
So basically, we were only allowed to have one opening exhibition, and the next day it was completely declared lockdown. That was on the 18th of December 2019.
所以当时他们做了开幕演出之后，演出完隔天，那个泰国就宣布封城，所以当时是当时12月18号做开幕演出。
So we had signed an MOU with Bauhaus University in Weimar, Germany at that time.
我们当时也跟德国巴浩斯大学也签署了 MOU。
So the main idea was to integrate art and design and performing arts into a digital kind of compatible platform that we could experiment with on that particular space.
当时我们希望能够运用这样的穹顶之后呢，能够把艺术设计还有表演艺术全部融入在这些符合这些各个空间能够呈现的艺术形式。
So only late last year did we manage to get the original invitation from Taipei, from Taiwan, to bring over virtual reality exhibitions. It was quite a major investment on both parts, both from our Chulalongkorn University part and also to Digital Art Foundation based in Taipei as well.
所以当时的话，其实我们一直到去年年底的时候，才有机会把我们之前所做的这个虚拟实境的展览呢，从泰国带到台北来。当时其实不论是朱拉隆功大学或者是数位艺术基金会，他们其实做了很多投资。
So it was a collaboration between Ministry of Culture, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Thailand, Digital Arts Center in Taiwan, and also Digital Art Foundation based in Taipei.
对，当时的合作伙伴包括文化部，包括了驻泰国的台北经济文化办事处，还有台北的数位艺术中心以及台北数位艺术基金会。
And next month we will have a sound art workshop and exhibition in Bangkok. So the artist will be he's a professor from National Thailand University.
所以在下个月我们也会在曼谷举办跟声响艺术有关的工作坊，到时候会邀请来自于南艺大的教授。
And he's the director of C-Lab Taiwan Experimental Sound Lab.
也是 C-Lab 现代声响实验室的主任。
So that was FAAMAI's kind of plan, which ended. And actually, the original FAAMAI program ended in January this year. So we're bringing that back to the faculty. So this idea of continuing the digital arts lab, that was a very much of a proactive project, going out to the public, going out to international partnership. That's actually has concluded. So we're bringing the activities, the knowledge back to the faculty.
所以刚才提到这个FAAMAI的计划，其实在今年1月的时候结束了。不过他们后来就在这个学院里面继续延续这个计划的内容。所以刚才提到这些数位艺术的内容，然后继续在学院里面累积知识，而且去做更多的国际串联。
So I'm going to be joining that introduction with the new program, Curatorial Practice, International Master's Degree Program in Curatorial Practice.
那各位看到这就是我们刚才提到FAAMAI这个计划结束之后，现在他们有个新的国际策展实践学程。
So this program started last year with we started with 7 students, but because of some interruptions along the line, we're now a team of 6 students. Interestingly, 2 of our candidates are Taiwan scholars.
那这个
scholarship.
这个硕士学程呢，其实一开始是打算收7名学生，那后来的话，因为种种艺术的关系，目前的话有6位学生，那其中2位来自台湾。
And one of our candidates is sitting here with us today, so it's a pleasure to. So it's a pleasure to have you with us. For you came over to support us. And our teaching team also includes Patrick and our advisor committee, Gridthiya, they're also here. So that's why I would like to basically move to the panel discussion in time.
所以我们今天在场1位学生在现场，另外的话，我们师资也包括 Patrick， 跟我们的咨询委员会也包括 Dia 在内，所以我很希望呢，给他可以直接进入到座谈时间。
So our fundamental proposition is based on this idea that we would like to open up the possibilities of curatorial practice to be something that's not exclusively visualized.
所以我们希望在这个课程里面的策展实践可以去往外延伸，而并不只限于视觉艺术而已。
So we're trying to include other creative disciplines to that, to add on to the knowledge from the previous kind of Western tradition.
所以希望在这个策展实践的课程里面的时候，能够涵盖更多不同面向，而不只是传统只有来自于西方的策展实践。
So the future is going to be, we're trying to set up a system that we are resilient to potential change, and we are ready for 21st century.
所以说，我们也希望我们在未来这套系统能够符合更多未来可能无法预期的变化跟转变，能够更加的适合21世纪的各种种变局。
Whether that can be achieved or not, we blame them.
当然，这到底能不能行得通呢？还要归咎或取决于我们的教师跟师资。
My personal background is in art practice, art education, and art management.
那我自己的个人经验呢，则主要来自于艺术实践、艺术教育，还有艺术的管理。
And my faculty of Flying and Applied Art at Chulalongkorn University, we specialize in visual arts. We also have music, traditional Thai and Western music. We also have dance, which is divided into traditional Thai and also Western. So, and we have what's commonly known as what other people in the world would call design, but we're not allowed to call faculty design because there's another faculty that teaches design. So we call it creative arts. Even though it's fashion, graphic design, ceramics, and exhibition design.
我们在这个美术学院里面，其实涵盖了各种不同的面向，除了有视觉艺术之外，还有音乐，那包括了西方音乐，还有传统泰国音乐，还有舞蹈，也是包括了泰国传统舞蹈跟西方的舞蹈。那另外一方面呢，我们另外有一个设计学院，就是我们的这些课程内容里面可以有设计2个字出现，所以我们有所谓的创意艺术。那创意艺术里面就包括了刚才提到的这些不同的展览的策划、展览制作，还有陶艺等等各种不同的不是设计的东西。
So I think this is a good time to basically leave the podium and perhaps we can move to the panel together just to maximize This is a perfect excuse, Patrick. I'm just saying that you have to leave in 28 minutes. So we're trying to make the most out of it.
好，那我的这个课程简介就在此结束。那接下来希望可以在接下来28分钟时间，尽快的让 Patrick 可以上台在家做。
好，既然我们时间这么紧凑，麦克风都来不及拿起来哈。既然我们时间这么紧凑，我们要不要直接就开放给现场的观众？有谁想要提问的话，就麻烦举手。
Since we have to be punctual, let's open the floor for questions, comments, and feedback. Anyone?
大家都这么害羞，28分钟很快就过了。
Yes, we only have 28 minutes.
27.
27. Okay. 27. Counting.
Okay.
I have a question.
I also have a question for Patrick. You ask us.
I asked a question to Gridthiya. Do you think? No. His time will come in a few minutes. Gridthiya, do you think it's possible for curatorial practice to work effectively as a multidisciplinary practice?
Of course. There's no question.
We have to translate.
大家的问题是，Gridthiya会不会认为说策展实践有没有办法作为跨领域实践，有没有办法真正的比如说落实跨领域的实践？那 Gridthiya 他说，当然没问题。
Your answer?
Yeah, of course, because this is what we are coming from, right? I mean, because of our background is pretty much like, for me, I'm not from the art background at all. I started with literature, and after I graduated, I worked in the refugee camps, and then I went to art school. So it's totally different. But what I'm interested in, and also, I grew up with like watching film, almost every day because my family owned the theater. So this is part of my kind of art training. So it's very kind of not easy, but just natural, to put everything together. Even though I work in the more or less like visual arts kind of setting, and that's why I kind of collaborate with Abhishek Thong, and I kind of force him to show in the gallery. And when the first time that I kind of fought with him, like, oh, you have to show your work in the gallery, and he said, I'm a filmmaker. I don't make art. I make film. Like, no. You have to like, let me show your work in the gallery. So that's how he kind of started his career, as being shown in both gallery space in the museum and also make film, right? So I think this is very natural, and we always do that, right? When we start project 3 or 4, we kind of he was part of the artistic committee. So we did like very multidisciplinary approach, but it was very political choice because in Thailand it was too much divided by the techniques, like painting department, sculptures department, film department, and they hate each other. It's not like not talking, they just hate each other. So we want to break that kind of tradition.
对我来说，这是非常自然而然的事情。其实我并不是来自于艺术领域，其实我本来出身念的是文学，后来去了难民营工作，后来才进了美术学校。所以对我来说的话，这些都是我自己在成长过程里面的这些不同的经验。我小时候看了很多电影，因为我们家开电影院，所以看了很多电影。这个对我来说，把不同的东西融合在一起是非常自然而然会发生的事情。所以对我来说，这也是为什么当时就是很努力的说服阿比查邦这位导演，把他的作品能够在画廊里面放映。当时阿比查邦一开始不愿意接受这件事，他说我是电影导演，我拍的是电影，我不是做艺术品。 但是我后来是说服他，让他有一些不同的机会跟取向，拍电影的同时还有机会在画廊展出。对我们来说，我们当时做 Project 304这个社群的时候，是希望能够打破很多隔阂。在泰国不同的创作方式，比如说绘画、雕塑这些不同创作方式，他们是彼此之间常常对立，又不喜欢对方，他们不喜欢互相沟通，所以我们希望透过这样的社群，可以打破这些过去旧有的隔阂。
Patrick, since you moved to National Museum of Singapore, so when I don't know if you guys been in that museum, right? So it's Singapore's trying to play the big brothers, in our region, and they're trying to rewrite our history. Okay, Patrick. Okay, and I just want to ask you, is there any alternative narrative, of writing the history of Southeast Asia based on non-nation kind of focus? And what is your suggestion?
Good question.
Well, my suggestion is extensive locality, as opposed to global modernism, because I think global modernism is too dependent on this concept of the global and also the concept of the modern. It's too, what do you call it, bound to those concepts. And ultimately, the nation state supports those concepts of the modern and also of the global. Of course, I'm oversimplifying, but they're quite, decisively interrelated. And I'd like to find another trajectory that may be in conversation with global modernism. I think global modernism is not without its value. I think it's able to expand, to dilate, to constellate, no? So, but I think it's not enough because it is indebted. No? It's indebted to very stubborn concepts of the modern or of the nation. So I just want to find another way to unhinge the narrative from the global and the modern. As tactically, just to provoke, just to loosen up this domination. But yeah, I think extensive locality is a possibility. I mean, through the University Museum, I think I demonstrated that, and maybe through a biennale like in Shanghai. Now, so these are instances of the extensive locality. The implications would be about an interlocal, or translocal, as you put it, interlocal, not international or global, but interlocal, and also interlocution, meaning some kind of critical conversation.
刚才 Gridthiya 的问题要问的是，现在Patrick 到了新加坡国立美术馆，新加坡国立美术馆如果有去过的话，非常的巨大。然后新加坡希望能够办东南亚的老大哥，然后试图去书写东南亚的历史，然后跨越这个所谓单一国家的概念去书写这样的历史。那 Patrick 到了这个新的单位任职之后有什么样的想法？他刚才提出的这个想法跟建议，就是他刚才在这个 Vargas Museum 所提到这个从在地开始延伸的概念。因为当然全球现代主义有它的自己的价值存在，但是他觉得这样并不足够，因为毕竟这样的一个论述必须要在建基在全球跟现代这样的概念。所以他认为，除了全球跟现代之外的话，其实透过 Vargas Museum 的这个案例当中可以看得出来，从在地开始往外延伸之后，也是另外一个观点跟角度。所以他希望进了这个美术馆之后，可以采取这样的途径跟这样的方式去论述或者是建构一些不同的想法。因为这也是他们现在试图能够透过，因为如果你 就该要从全球现代主义去呈现的话，就势必没有办法去放下全球跟现代这两个概念。那希望能够把这样的一个紧密的结构慢慢的松开之后，有一些更多在地呈现的可能性。无论是接下来看到的泰国双年展，或者我们今天看到这些不同展览里面，都强调跨在地之间的沟通，它并不一定要经过现代或经过全球，可以跟在地之间直接开始沟通之后，串联出新的在地的连接。
好，听都出神哈，现场观众有没有要提问的？每次都来到这个很像教师课堂的感觉。
Any questions, comments, feedbacks? No worry. We'll have a great team. So. No microphone back there.
I have a comment and a question to all three of you. It's related to Jim's first question about curatorial practices becoming interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. My question is the reverse in a way about how, and it's inspired by your work about digging the history of your own hometown. And I feel that a lot of the curatorial practices produce a lot of very relevant historic work and documentation and archival work, which is like a public historian. And I wonder if after the pandemic especially, it's possible for this kind of work to not remain within art and art curation, but in a way see your work a lot more like a public historian and reach out to greater audience, which is not limited to art. I wonder if that is possible, and how, if there is an example or if there's something that you are doing in these lines, I would really like to know. And thank you very much for some really wonderful talks.
I can.
Maybe translate.
他的问题是有点像是刚才同后的问题，要反过来思考。他现在看到的是，其实，在很多的策展实践当中的时候，这些策展实践都去，比如说去专注了当地的历史、青睐的历史啊，各地不同历史，他去挖掘了很多也许一般大众并不熟悉的内容，然后有很多很精彩的呈现。他的问题是有没有办法有机会让这些的内容，并不只限于在艺术策展当中能够让更多的大众或者触及到艺术以外的领域，然后去呈现出来，让大家也许透过艺术策展人或者是艺术家他们这些大众或者公民历史学家的观点之后，去看到那些他们也许过去没有看到或者是忽略的面向。
It's very interesting and good question, because I think Chiang Rai has demonstrated that they really take over the Biennale, because since we started to launch the project, last year, it was a kind of announced that Chiang Rai will be a host, and then we have a big kind of PR, and opening in the temple. So the governor came, with like the head of the 18th district, and then artists, communities, and historians, and everyone. So since that month, from July onwards, a lot of people and different activities happen in Chiang Rai in different districts. They always claim that this is part of Thailand Biennale, Chiang Rai. And right now they already like hijacked it. It's not Thailand, it's Chiang Rai Biennale. It's totally localized, and they really have a strong kind of ownership, of Biennale, and they are so eager to be part of it, in every level, like villagers, people, artists, they really want to be part of it. So for us, when we did the site visit, we always got the questions from them: how can I be part of your Biennale, and how can we participate with the festival and everything. And I remember one time we went around around in Piers, and there was like a kind of a garden, and the music, which is organized by the city. And there was like a kind of small music program by the students. And the MC announced that, oh, this is a performance by the students from Chiang Rai School. And it was part of the Thailand Biennale. And I was like, I don't have to do anything, it's already happened, right? But the other part about the historian and local kind of, key leaders, they already get together, in different districts, and they started to speak about local history and alternate history, a history that has been contested by the Bangkok government. And I think this is a very, very good sign. Yeah.
其实，在我们在去年6月的时候，在那个白庙举办记者会，去宣告今年的泰国双年展会在清莱举办之后，其实当时的时候，无论政府官员啊、18区的领袖，或者是当地的艺术家都有参与在其中。之后，其实有很多当地艺术社群都不断的想要透过不同方式能够参与这个双年展。他们常常说这是泰国双年展的一部分在清莱，但是我觉得现在已经清莱这个地方已经完全的主宰跟占据了这个双年展的概念，对我来说更像是清莱双年展。我们现在其实到不同地方去做参访的时候，他们都会有很多人问我们说，要怎么样去参与这个过程，怎么样去介入到清莱当双年展的过程当中，或是泰国双年展当中。但在过程里面，比如说有些市政府举办的活动啊，他们在除了这些官方举办的音乐场合之外，他们也会有邀请当地的学生去做音乐演出，也会特别去强调说，这个也是泰国双年展的一部分。所以某种程度而言，泰国双年展已经在发生，已经在进行了，自然几乎不需要做什么事情就可以看到这些活动不断的在各个地方出现。那另外一方面，我们去专注这些历史的时候，其实自从我们开始去研究这些历史之后，其实看到很多当地的社群，他们也在去专注讨论他们所认知的历史。这些历史也许不见容于曼谷的中央政府，或者是不同于官方论点，但是他们也的确开始提出一些源自于他们当地对于当地历史的认知的了解。
And then the last before you answer, so the structures of the Biennale will be the main exhibition, which we invite 60 artists, 20 something come from Thailand, 5 from Chiang Rai, and we have a lot of indigenous, from Thailand and also the rest of the world. And about 20 artists come from Asia, and the rest is like Latin America and European countries. And then we will have pavilions, about 10 pavilions, from institutions inside and outside of Thailand. In 5 pavilions, we open call for local artists, all Chiang Rai artists, and we got 25 proposals from artist collective, from Chiang Rai itself. And then we will have Curatorial event, which I got a lot of calls, from people around the world that they want to be part of. So if anyone, you have your own budget, you want to work with us, you're welcome to Curatorial event, right? And then we have around 60 to 80 artist studios that you can visit around the province, which is like 18 districts. So it's very kind of multiple layers, of something that you can see the show, you can really have an access to artists, local artists. And then because me and Gridthiya, we are super foodie person, right? So we're gonna have a special thing for you guys. Like we will recommend the place to stay, the place to eat, and we will have curators picks, on each place. Like a lot of menus, will be recommended by us. So this is special for everyone.
到时这个双年展举办的时候，会有不同的面向。那除了有这个主要的展区，邀请了20位艺术家，其中20位来自其中20位来自60位艺术家，其中20位来自泰国，那5位来自清莱，还有来自于20位在亚洲各地的艺术家，还有20位来自世界其他地区的艺术家。除了主要展区之外，还有很多的还有10个不同的馆。那5个馆呢，是我们去规划的这些不同的单位，不同的机构所办的展览。那另外5个馆呢，是用这个开放征件的方式，我们当时收到了25件来自于清莱各个地方的这个艺术团体他们的提案，所以到时候也会有不同的馆的这个呈现。那另外一方面还会有很多的周边卫星活动。那很多的单位在当地都进行洽询，我们希望能够办这些周边卫星活动。另外一个层面是他们会有大概60到80个艺术工作室遍布在清莱这个省份的18个区域当中，所以到时候会有很多不同的面向可以去参加。所以如果各位有兴趣的话，清莱的双年展呢是今年的12月6号到明年的4月30号。那如果各位有兴趣来的话，我们也可以帮助各位去安排住的地方，还有各个不同的形式。
I think in response to the question about opening up the material to a wider world, the 2 platforms have emerged from this discussion. The first platform, of course, is the University Museum. So the University Museum is able to expand the context of the material, not only, I mean, the University Museum is not only, at least Vargas, is not only an art museum, as I mentioned earlier. It has an archive, it's a research center, it has a program for contemporary art, and of course it has a collection of colonial to modern Philippine art. So I think the University Museum model is a productive platform, no? And the other platform is the Biennale. The Biennale is also a great way. Of course, it's been much maligned platform. The Biennale curator has been subjected to all forms of criticism, which I think is, of course, fair game, being a position of power. But the Biennale is a productive platform. It also opens up art it exposes it to a larger atmosphere, no? And it brings in more players, no? And more practitioners from different backgrounds, no? And the Biennale also benefits from a cycle of different curators. So every curator brings into the Biennale different intelligence, no? And this is important, no? The museum is another story. It's an institution that doesn't move so quickly, no? It's less nimble, I think, less agile, but there are internal changes within the museum. And I think the idea of Clementine Delis and the Museum University is also a good way to maybe unhinge to a certain extent the museum from its commitment to art history. The museum is largely governed by art history. A case that is, I mean, the Biennale is not so much, no? It's not so much governed by art history. So maybe that's one way to complicate the work in the museum by looking at this concept of the museum university. Like the museum as in the ideas of Clementine, a place of remediation. It's a laboratory to remediate objects. Yeah.
那今天讨论里面其实也看到两个不同的模式就是刚才提到 Vargas 这样的大学美术馆的模式。那这个模式里面，这个美术馆它当然本身有自己无论是殖民时期或者是现代时期的菲律宾艺术的典藏，另外一方面还有很多的历史档案，同时的话还有很多研究的层面存在，可以去生产出各种不同的知识，去扩散到艺术以外的区域。那另外一个模式就是刚才提到的双年展的模式。当然，双年展现在很多时候大家会批评，无论是策展人或者整个双年展的运作模式。但是双年展其实不同的策展人来介入的时候，他们也会有不同的观点，可以去介入还有去融入跟包容不同的这些元素在其中，而并不只有艺术的层面在其中而已。这也是另外一个模式。那相对而言的话，美术馆本身就是一个比较相对而言比较庞然大物、比较不容易移动或变更的这种机构或模式，但是他们其实有很多内部的创新在进行。美术馆跟双年展之间的差别在于，美术馆同样非常强调的是艺术史，在讨论艺术史的时候，他们就会有比较一些固着的概念跟想法在其中。相对而言，双年展就不一定要去触及到艺术史等等，他们的运作模式会相对比较弹性和活跃。但是我们刚才提到这个所谓的美术馆大学的概念之后，也许可以去稍微翻转，或是去扭转一下现在的美术馆他们在思考这个如何书写的模式。
No, I think that they answered so well. I think we should move on to the next question.
好，下面。Hi, hello. I have a question for everyone. To build a big museum need a lot of budget, and it's the same to initiate or to run biennale or biennial. So, what's your? From your perspective, how to balance the rural areas with the big cities? Usually big museums or biennales will happen or take place in big cities. It's rare, like Thailand Biennale.
hosted by Chiang Rai. So I would like to hear from you. Thank you.
通常的话呢，这些美术馆或者是双年展都是在大城市举办，所以要怎么样，而且要花很多的经费去举办。在这种情况之下，这些单位或双年展如何去平衡一些城乡之间的差距？因为毕竟大多数双年展并不是在像比如说清莱这样的比较边境城市，或者是相对没有规模这么大的城市举办。
Really, for me, I'm pro decentralization, as this is my motto. So I think I think everything has to centralize from Bangkok, because the reason why Bangkok is so digested, so like traffic jam and everything, right? Because people have to come to Bangkok to work, to study, right? I always have this question when I was young, like why do I have to come to Bangkok? Because I should be able to do something in Chiang Mai or in Chiang Rai, right? But there is no job. Like if you are curators or artists, where would you be, right? Even though a lot of people based in Chiang Mai, but at the end, a lot of artists, contemporary artists, work with Abhishek Pong Nawin. Everyone stay in Chiang Mai. But Chiang Mai is almost like a production site for them, But they show where? MoMA, like Mocha, Taipei Art Museum, like elsewhere, right? And right now, slowly, we have a museum in Chiang Mai, and then you will have more in Chiang Mai, right? In the next few years, and a lot of stuff happening in the Northeast and in the Deep South, right? So that was the beginning of the decentralization process, but it was not initiated by the government. The government just slowly wake up, and started to, okay, I have to travel around, which is only 2018. But I think it's kind of double-edged sword, like if you want to do Biennale or anything, triennial or anything, Fukutake, the big guys, from Seto Ishii and Ashiko Sumari said, if you want to do something super successful and good, you have to do it 3 times. Like, yes, Thailand Biennale do it 3 times, but you change city every time. This is number 1, like the dark side. Number 2, all the teams change every time. And number 3, it's the bureaucratic system that will kill all of us. The reason why Thailand or Southeast Asia or any country in the world will never go anywhere is because of this bureaucratic system, right? I always say on the stage, and this time I will repeat myself, like my country has been driven by dinosaurs, snails, and a herd of buffalo. This is my country. Okay, so we have to really debunk that kind of system. And it's totally challenging, to do that, right? I mean, because like the bureaucratic system, it starts from like the state and, who are always afraid that you will be corrupted. Right? So it starts with the impossible. Right? So we really have to work around that. And because it was the governmental budget, it's the taxpayers' money, so you have to be double careful. And so I think the Biennale, the function of the Biennale, it has to be elsewhere. It should not be situated in the place where everything is well infrastructures. That is the function of the Biennale. You have to go to the most poorest, the most poverty, the problematic side. For me, if I were the government, I would go to the Deep South. That is the most problematic area. And we use art, I use the word, I use art, utilize art as a tool, right, to really make things better, because we believe in the power of art, right. So Chiang Rai, why not Chiang Rai? Chiang Rai has a lot of problems, and I think we need it, to really kind of, work around. This is the first time that people, local people, historians, villagers, everyone come together, because of this. Thailand Biennale is almost like a magic word, and I think people put so much hope on it. And I'm really afraid that they would disappoint, if it is not go as they imagined that it should have been. So it's kind of burden in a way. And then on the other hand, Chiang Rai will be the only city in Thailand that will continue to have their own Chiang Rai Biennale. And I don't think Thailand Biennale will have a future because we still don't know what is the next city, that is going to host this Biennale.
我一直以来都是非常强调跟支持这些去中心化的发展，那我一直认为去中心化还能让这些事情变得更加丰富、更加多元。那泰国双年展这个组织这个机构有它本来实质的问题存在。当然的话，过去有人说，如果你要把这些事情办得成功的话，你要办3次。但是呢，泰国双年展每一届都会在不同的城市举办，这是一项问题。另外一方面问题是，国内的官僚体制也是另外一项问题，因为毕竟官僚体制的确。我们的国家老实说领导人是一时刮牛跟水牛，就是动作非常慢。这种情况之下，很难有很多快速的前进的机会。那另外一方面，官僚体制要避免大家用纳税钱之后会有更多贪腐情事的发生，所以有很多的繁文缛节，这也是另外一项问题所在。但是我还是觉得这些活动、双年展、3年展等等，一定要在脱离大城市之后，脱离这些基础设施非常完善的地方，到了这些偏远的地方，无论是东北，无论是南部等等。比如说泰国南部现在就有很多问题存在，我觉得艺术我们相信还有这样的力量可以去唤醒跟改变很多的现况。我觉得如果是泰国中央政府的话，我就一定会把这个双年展带到南部去，让透过艺术力量去改变现况。泰国的政府其实非常慢才意识到，他们必须要开始有更多去中心化的思考。我小时候一直觉得，为什么我一定要去曼谷念书，一定要在曼谷求职？但是如果你不在曼谷念书求职的话，基本上没有工作机会。那现在的话，在清迈的话，阿比茶坊它基本上就成了他们好像的制作的中心一样。但除此之外，他们其实工作机会还是相对有限，所以。而且很多时候，阿比茶坊的作品也不在泰国展出，他们是在纽约 MoMA 展出，在北美馆展出，在当代馆展出，所以他们有很多现在面临这样的情况跟局限。但是我还是觉得，在未来我们一定要透过这种方式之后，把去中心化的逻辑应用在艺术当中。尤其我相信，泰国双年展下一届未来不知道，但是我相信下一届的青蓝双年展还是会发生的。
Can you provide the last talk before you leave?
Right. Yeah, let me not stop this discussion. I can leave and we can continue. Just to maybe to the question of Sandy, right? It's a great question. The question of economy because it's linked to scale and also it's linked to sustainability. So I always believe that the Biennale model should find the right scale for the place. So it should not adopt this universal model of the global Biennale or like Documenta or Venice, right? So the place should shape the scale and also the participation of the community should shape the scale of the Biennale and also should shape the immune system or the stamina of the sustainability of the Biennale and yeah, I think that's the only way to contribute to the discourse and the economy of the Biennale platform. I'm thinking of, for instance, the Visayas Biennale in the Philippines is the longest running Biennale in the region is sustained by artistic resources. Of course, with the help of the private sector and also government, but then the main driving force would be the artists of the region. So this is a good model to see. It's sustained and scale, of course, is not very large, but it's there. So it's the scale, economy, and stamina. I think should all go together.
双年展的模式其实当然会牵涉到，比如说经济规模，还有经济的永续性等等。我们觉得，其实各地双年展并不应该去遵循这个全球双年展这个都固定的模式，比如说卡塞尔文件展或者是威尼斯双年展，这些模式其实都在其他国家适用，但是并不一定在当地适用。我觉得，比如说 菲律宾的比赛亚双年展，它其实就是一个历史非常悠久的双年展。但他们虽然有来自于民间还有公部门的支持，但最重要是当地的艺术家。所以也许它的规模并没有其他的双年展这么大，但是他们的确有更长久维系下去的动力跟这个基础，可以让它继续发展下去。
I have to leave now, so we can continue. And I'd like to thank the translator, who is amazing. I'm translating our notes anyway. Yeah.
对，但是其实我们今天的时间也差不多，所以我想说，我们是不是就先到此为止？大家可以私下交流哈。然后也非常谢谢对不起，最后一位强才没回答，Patrick 要离开了，对。
I think our time is almost up as well.
I think we can take more questions if anyone would like. Maybe 2 more questions. New questions.
那虽然时间有限，但是在结束之前，有没有任何人想问任何问题呢？
非常感谢就是有两者的精彩的那个分享，这样子。我的问题非常的简单，我刚好下个月就到曼谷参访，那有什么推荐的展览可以观看的吗
My question is very simple, probably to both of you. I'm going to Bangkok next month. Any recommendation on exhibition?
Number 2 most visited location in Bangkok, and number 1 on a Monday most visited location in Bangkok is where she is. Jim Thompson Museum. There are 2 parts. There's the old Thai house, and there's the more contemporary space for art and a library. And I think it's a very good start to get your bearings. I know that we are, well, in that area there's the BACC, Bangkok Art and Culture area. But if I were you, I would go to Bangkok Agriculture first and leave a little bit more time for Jim Thompson. This is complete bias. I'm hijacking the moment.
Maybe you should go to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai as well. I mean, don't stick only in Bangkok. Yeah, and if you have more time, go to the beach. So this is like, actually, I'm not from Tourist Authority of Thailand. Why do we have to do this?
Please, translate.
如果各位有时间的话，那个 Jim Thompson 的艺术中心是他刚才提到是曼谷第2受欢迎的旅游景点，也是尤其如果是礼拜1的话，很多地方都关门，所以它是第1最受欢迎的旅游景点。Jim Thompson 艺术中心有2个部分，一个是比较泰国传统房屋的部分，那还有一些比较当代有艺术图书室，还有当代艺术的部分，我觉得很值得看一下。那个区里面当然也包括那个曼谷艺术文化中心。 那地方也有很多不同的展览。那如果有时间的话，其实从曼谷坐飞机到清迈只要1小时，所以如果你有时间的话，去清迈也不错。那刚才有也提到了，如果你有空的话，去海边也不错。当然，我们并不是观光旅游局代表了，所以没办法做出非常权威性的回答。
Number 1 location is a Grand Palace.
还有那个河对岸的大皇宫。
But not on a Monday.
礼拜1休息嘛。
Because they're closed.
对，礼拜1公休，很多泰国的单位都礼拜1公休。
But I think you have to go in December. It's better because Thailand Biennale will start.
是，泰国双年展12月号开始，然后大家不要错过。
สวัสดีค่ะ
Hi student.
Yeah, I'm Thai student and I'm studying curatorial here in Taipei. So I have a question for Gridthiya. For me, I feel so excited that you said, oh, you got a lot of proposals from local artists and also at least 60 or to 80 studios that open in Chiang Mai Biennale. But for me, as an art student, like Thai art student, from what we know is the local artists still their practices of APCO is very well handcrafted and it's very beautiful in terms of the color or the aesthetic. But in terms of the concept or the idea of the work, I think from what I know, local artists, they be very conservative, let's say that. Yeah, so as an artistic director of the Thailand Biennale, do you think or how do you work to balance the idea of a very conservative local Thai artist and also the expectation from global audience? Yeah, I think this is maybe for me it's the most interesting thing, and I'm waiting to see that in the work.
Yeah, this is very good.
Good question.
Good question.
这位是在台北念书的泰国学生，那他其实好奇的是，在这次的展览当中，刚才提到总共会有很多来自于当地艺术家的提案，然后有60到80个艺术家工作室的开放等等。但是他们一般所知道当地的艺术家或者是这些地方的艺术家的时候，他们都制作非常的精美，但是在概念或观念上面也许相对比较保守。所以这种情况之下，如何去权衡？比如说观念上面相对保守的当地艺术家，还有来自于世界各地观众的期望值。
I don't know if you come for my presentation or not, because at the end, there was one kind of themes that we are looking forward to is the coexistence of time and art and craft, because I think we have to admit that the what we call neo-traditional art or traditional art, it exists everywhere, and actually they are the majority, right? And what we do is totally 0.5% of the contemporary art which no one understands, right? So
You're saying this in Mocha.
Yes. I don't know, this is Thailand. Thailand is not Taiwan, okay? No, but I think this is what we are fighting for, right? So we have to kind of admit that there is no hierarchy anymore. Forget the ideas of modernists, right? High art, low art. I think we are totally go beyond that kind of this binary of high and low art, because now the contemporary artists, they do everything, right? Milans, a lot of people work with craft, and that is what we call contemporary craft. But I think what we are trying to do, in Chiang Rai is we slowly we're not gonna baptize them, you guys have to change it and, do something more contemporary, because their time and our time actually is in the same time. But maybe they are against time, but we are trying to work on the linear time as, the global community. But I think this is interesting, and I think they are also learning from us, and we are learning from, I don't want to say them, actually it's us, right? Because for Chiang Rai artists, they would regard me as, Vijay is Chiang Rai people, she is one of us. And I think this is very interesting, to be the local artists kind of regarded me as, I'm part of their community. But I think there will be a lot of interesting kind of collaboration between contemporary artists from Thailand and outside of Thailand to work with the craftsmanship and local artists. And for example, there was just last week, we invited a few artists from Southeast Asia, and one Filipino artist, he was interested in water resources management, and then he went to visit the resource management station in Chiang Rai. And the head of the resource management, he was so interested in his project, and actually he's a hobby artist. And he asked our curator, how can I participate with your Biennale? I wanted to show my work and my friend's work in the Biennale. So the Filipino artist decided to, why don't we go work together? So he's gonna use the water resources and the railway station library, as his kind of one of his venue, and then they're gonna collaborate together. So this kind of stuff, I think you will see a lot, in the Biennale.
在这次的双年展当中，我非常强调的主题是我们希望能够去强调那个时间有多重时间是并行并置共存的，然后这些艺术跟工艺也都确实的并置在并存在。那在泰国至少呢，其实99%以上的艺术家做的都是传统艺术，那做当代艺术可能只有0.005%，然后大家还看不懂。这种情况之下，其实占大多数的传统艺术的时候，我们必须要去承认这个事实存在，然后进而去试图去再呈现出不同的艺术面向。现在当代艺术家，我希望能够打破很多的阶层，比如当代艺术家可能很多各种不同的素材都会使用，各种不同的主题都会触及等等。那也许在这个双年展过程里面，当代艺术家或比较相对传统的艺术家，也许可以彼此之间相互的学习，有很多可以互相激荡出来的新的火花或新的可能性存在。很多时候，我们也会非常鼓励这比较当代的艺术家也可以去参考一下这些传统的工艺或者传统的艺术。比如说，我们上礼拜的时候邀请了几位东南亚艺术家到当地来参访。那其中一位菲律宾的艺术家呢，他就到了当地，他对于这个水资源管理很有兴趣。所以到了当地水资源管理的单位去参访之后呢，当地水资源管理的这个主管其实他自己是业余的艺术家，他就非常的感兴趣，他就问他们说有没有机会能够让他也参加这次的泰国双年展。那菲律宾艺术家就因此决定跟这位水资源管理的主管一起合作，他们到时候会在这个火车站旁边的这个图书馆，然后进行展览跟策划。所以这个案例跟这样的模式，我相信在这次的泰国双年展会非常的多。那我觉得这次也很有意思是，其实当地艺术家认为不必要来自青睐，它也是这个青睐整个社群的一部分。所以我相信在这一次会有很多我们看到这些所谓传统艺术家跟不那么传统的艺术家之间互动之后，产生出新的不一样的作品。
好，今天讲座真的是非常难得经验，而且内容真的很精彩。但是我必须要来到最后一个问题。
And the last question before we go.
Okay, so I have a question for both of you. Right now, currently, both of you having the public system supporting for Chulalongkorn University and Ministry of Culture. So I would like to know, do you have any perspective on disrupting the bureaucratic system of the government to propose new things?
两位现在都有某一个层面的公务的背景在身上，那两位有没有什么样的机会去挑战、打破、颠覆公务系统？
I learned from experience that complaining doesn't work. So the only way out is to try and generate what we can with whatever budget we have. I believe that in this day and age, the platform for voicing our ideas doesn't cost anything compared to... Well, it doesn't have to, it could be, beg, borrow, steal.
在现在这个我自己的经验当中，我认为光是抱怨是没有用的。你要去改变的话，一定要从你自己可以做的事情开始，你自己拿到的预算开始。那现在，他认为说，其实现在你要去对外发声的话，成本也许相对跟过去而言没有这么高。然后，也许你有其他各种不同的方式。你刚才说的 beg, borrow, steal， 就是你可以用贵的、用求的、用偷的，不管怎么样，各种方式把你的意见表达出去。
To answer your question, if we have a new government, if we have a young prime minister, if we have all this kind of changing the side of the new government, maybe we can have a prosperous, brighter future for our country, right? So that is the only way that we can change. However, I want everyone to play for Thailand, not to have coup d'etat, or not to have this. Okay, cyclical times, syndrome. I think, this is what we are kind of worried about. Yeah. So now we are really in this junction. We don't know if we're gonna go to hell or heaven. Thank you very much.
好，我们现在当然经过大选之后呢，即将会有新的年轻的总理上任。我们当然希望，也许在他带领之下会有很多的变化产生。但是呢，泰国过去20年期间其实政变频仍，其实不止20年了。泰国很多年以来都政变频仍的情况之下，当然未来会怎么样，还在未定之天。也许会上天堂，也许会下地狱，还不得而知。
其实台湾在这几年来，我们好像感觉蛮幸运，在艺术创造环境有一些自由度哈。但是其实跟泰国还是会有某些处境上，总是感觉会有一些相似性。那我们也非常感谢今天来自泰国跟菲律宾的这几位朋友给我们今天非常棒的一个talk。可以先翻译一下。
So we were lucky enough in the past few years that in Thailand we do enjoy quite a few of creative freedom. But both in some aspects, we still resembles the situation in Thailand. So once again, we're very happy to have our speakers from Thailand and the Philippines today with us.
所以非常感谢各位今天参与，我们也为泰国祈祷，以及为台湾祈祷，大家都会去一定要相信未来会更好。
So thank you everyone for joining us, and we can pray for Taiwan and Thailand for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
OK， 谢谢大家今天参与。